You are listening to the Practicing the Art of Small Business podcast with Shannyn Merlo and Julie Parker. Enjoy this conversation about business, leadership, and the self-awareness journey to great success.
Welcome, Julie, and welcome, listeners, to Practicing the Art of Small Business. We're on episode number 45, Julie, if my calculations are correct.
I think you might be right.
Even if I'm wrong, we'll just change the number next time we record.
How's your few weeks? We've been maybe 3 weeks since we last recorded.
Although we did do a chin wag last week just for shits and giggles.
Yep, sometimes we just kind of prattle on and then we say, well, forgot to do the podcast. So what is our topic for today?
Well, I wondered whether we could talk about how you can consciously uncouple from your clients.
You're not saying divorce, are you?
No. So this came about because on one level I had a client who said, can we just pause things? And there's always a little bit of sadness when that happens, and there's always that, I didn't do enough and why not and all the rest of it. But I always go in with grace because it's a relationship. A coaching engagement is a relationship, right? And I know for the most part I generally don't pee off my clients.
Not a good habit to get into, that's for sure.
Not a good habit. And so quite often for any client, it's uncomfortable because it's a breakup. I'm doing like talking marks. So you want to be gracious about it and grateful for their journey, and I think ask for feedback and opportunities to keep the door open potentially. But the contrast was I heard through the grapevine of someone who had been dumped as a client, and dumped's not the right word. They had been asked to cease services to someone that I knew, and apparently it didn't go down very well at all from the person who was providing the services. The person who provided the services was quite aggressive in the interaction and quite put out. And I thought that given that there's ways to do it well and not do it well, we could talk about how to do it well, why we should do it well, what the benefits are. It probably wraps into our previous episode where we were talking about, not episode 44, not episode number 43.
This could take a long time.
Not episode number 42. But episode number 41, which was all about the exceptional, not the unanticipated levels of customer service that you did.
You got the terminology right.
There you go. And we talked a little bit about customer journeys and the funnel. So this kind of plays into the bottom part of the funnel. How do you keep someone engaged? So that's probably the why. So I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought we would talk about today. Julie,
I love it. And I've already written down many things.
Oh, great. Well, we're off to a good start.
And so the first question that I had come up in my head when you were talking about it was, well, our management of it, when you're talking about the person that wasn't all that gracious in the moment and yourself that you were far more gracious in the moment, what are the thoughts that we're having? What does it mean to the person, to the provider of the services, when the client wants to either pause or cease all activities completely? It's such a thing that it does depend on the specific scenarios for it. I think if you know that you've been the provider of a service in a way that is aggressive or not helpful at all, or God forbid destructive, then when you kind of get fired, then you would understand and you'd think, okay, not ideal, feel bad, I'm regretful, but I understand. But I imagine that when someone wants to cease work and it's confusing to the provider of the services, I suppose they may not have enough information yet to know what to do with that.
So what you're sort of saying is it's a bit of sort of self-regulation and emotional intelligence to be able to navigate it without that.
If you're finding yourself falling into the ego-driven response of I'm defensive, I'm hurt, I'm upset, I'm all those sort of things, well, maybe you just don't have enough information yet. And so I suppose developing, well, what are the words I'm going to say next that then will help me determine how I'm going to respond to it. And if I'm going to, if Shannyn, if you said to me, if I was your coach, for example, and you said to me, you know what, I want to stop working with you for a period of time.
No, definitely.
I'm so helpful to you. I can't. You are ungrateful. You're ungrateful. But if I said, "Oh, okay," that came as a surprise because I thought things were going very well and positively. Then, I mean, I'm a big one for state how you're feeling in that moment. You don't have to say it aggressively, but the question could be, "Oh, tell me more about that, Shannyn." And the minute that we've got more information, you might say something that means it's actually got nothing to do with me. It's not about me. So you could say something like, "Oh, I'm actually moving country," or "My sister-in-law is a coach and she's trying to get herself off the ground, so I promised her I'd be her client." Or there could be something where it had nothing to do with my skills as a coach. And once I found out that information, then the meaning that I attached to the scenario of you leaving my coaching services is very positive because it's not a fault from me. It's not because I didn't perform in a certain way. And so then I can sit back and the meaning I attach to that is, well, free, I'm a big believer in free will. You've got every right, Shannyn. I understand the reasoning behind it. I respect it. Let's move on. And you're always welcome to come back if ever you wanted to in the future. However, if I said to you, "Whoa, that's interesting, Shannyn. Tell me more about that." I just feel like I'm not getting the value from our interactions. "Oh, that's okay. Well, totally respect you moving on. Sometimes it's a good thing to go to a different coach. But I wonder if we could have a conversation so it would help me in my coaching ability moving forward." What was it that you felt like was lacking? Is it something that you can articulate? Do you mind if we talk about that for 5 minutes?
Well, I might interrupt there, Julie, because I think that there's really great gold in what you're saying. So I wonder whether we need to think about this from like going back to that funnel and that outstanding, unanticipated customer experience perspective, that obviously if someone's buying a item off your website, they're not going to tell you that they're not working with you anymore.
I've made this very permanent decision. I'm not coming back to buying.
I'm never coming back. So we're probably talking about a scenario where there is an ongoing engagement or there's an uncoupling in a service agreement that needs to happen. So if you're an accountant or whatnot, and there needs to be a ceasing of the engagement, or bookkeeper, even lawyer, I don't think there needs to be a conscious uncoupling because you could probably cheat on them and go to another lawyer and they're not going to know. But certainly when there's a retained model, and there's probably a question around, do you as a client, if you're a client, do you have a responsibility to communicate the uncoupling, and what's your role in the uncoupling? And then perhaps that going into, as a supplier, how can we manage self if we're taking it personally, and how can we do it better, and how can we have a better mindset around it? So it probably affects more service-based business owners and more whereas there's that personal ongoing relationship. And why we're talking about this, just going back to our funnel, is that there's so much opportunity at the bottom of the funnel when someone has already used your services, that assuming that you have done a good job and provided a great service, and it is a case that they are pausing the service because they are going on holidays, moving country, or they're pausing the service because their circumstances have changed, what can you do to ensure that there is an opportunity for them to still be a raving fan of your business? Or even if it's a fact that they've outgrown you in your service. So again, I might use an accounting practice. I've got clients where their business has grown past the ability of that accountant to service them. They're probably never going to go back, but you still want to maintain a relationship where, as the accountant, where if that person has anyone else that they know or working with, you want to get some kudos and some accolades from that person. So making sure that from that funnel perspective, we are actually doing our best to maximize the opportunity for people to come back around, to be raving fans, to give us great Google reviews and things like that.
Yeah. What thoughts have you had around that? How to do that?
Well, I think number one, and going back, depending on how you edit this, Julie, with the scenario where the person was quite unhappy with being moved on from the service, I suspect what's happened is that there was a projection of this is you, this isn't me. And this can actually happen, especially in coaching arrangements. And I've experienced this myself where I've kind of wanted to leave a coach. In fact, I wanted to leave a psychologist and they made it about me, which says a lot about the psychologist.
There must be something seriously wrong with you if you want to leave my services. No wonder
You're not healthy enough to not be working with me. There's still lots of work.
Nobody else can either.
There's so much work for you to still do with me. I've had it with coaches where they're like, you're lacking commitment. This is not about me and my services. You're failing to deliver on your part of the bargain. You lack commitment. You are the problem. And there are plenty of...
If someone had that response to me when I was wanting to exit, that would just put a big red cross for a start. I'd never go back to them again. It would also give me a great insight on what a great decision it was to leave that person's employ. What a childish way to respond.
Yes and no. In certain personality styles, that actually triggers the I'm not good enough thing, and then they stay to prove them wrong. So it's a psychological thing that coaches do use, and that especially some of those big dog talking coaches, like rah rah rah, I'll 10 times your rah rah rah, and you just gotta work and you don't need sleep. You only need 4 hours sleep. If you want to be successful, you do anything to be successful. You won't eat. You won't sleep. You won't have relationships.
Man, you've got quite a circle around you.
We should record that. That's now my motivational speech. But there's those ones out there which is like attracting A-type personalities and that sort of thing. And if you say to an A-type personality, you're giving up, you're quitting, and this is the test of your success, that triggers within them that desire to not be seen as a quitter. So there is actually a point to it. It's a NLP psychological technique.
Okay.
Julie's face. If you don't do us on the tube,
away big time. I will be thinking, well, thank goodness I made the decision to move on. Obviously, a very good decision. I don't think who even needs to have that kind of manipulation come back to you? It's crazy. It's like a bad relationship.
Well, so this is the thing. So I think maybe we when we started this podcast episode, we were talking about brand identity. I guess it maybe plays into brand identity a little bit. I don't. Julie's face. People, if you're not watching us on the tubes, I would say that this episode, like most episodes, is worthwhile because Julie's face is just of utter disbelief and.
So I would imagine that would be a rare response where you come back you've tried to, I just want to take a break for a bit, and the other person comes up back manipulative and controlling, and it's all your fault, none of it's my fault sort of thing. I think that a lot of people would have the thoughts, those instant thoughts come up in their brain for sure, because we do it does ring internal alarm bells, but many people do have a stronger sense of control over their impulses, that they don't leap down on people like that. And so this kind of brings it back to, well, if we're having that breakaway in that relationship, it is how effective, or I should say, how effectively managed that discussion is, that conversation is, that will then either create the environment that will more likely be one of, controlled professional responses, or tip into, that, Dave verbally attacked me, I'm going to verbally attack them.
I'm going to make it about them. So I think there is that opportunity before having that conversation. So again, assuming that it's a service-based situation, you've been notified by the client that you want to pause or uncouple or what have you. Oh, actually, I've got a really good example, Julie, of, I don't know if I've ever brought it up on this podcast, but you know very much about the assistant who gaslit me. And after I said I'd like to end it, they didn't communicate with me at all. And it was when I cancelled the subscription that the person who I thought I was talking to, but I wasn't actually talking to, got in touch with me. So they had a big document that I signed about how they were going to uncouple with me.
And that gave me signed at the start of your agreement together.
Correct. And that gave me faith. This is a professional organisation. Well, they said, oh, well, we're sorry you didn't have a good experience and we want to make it better and blah, 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 blah. And then they ghosted me. They never responded to any message. There was never an uncoupling. There was never just like, oh, my goodness. I would never, ever, ever recommend that business, ever. They could have potentially brought it back, potentially. You never know. So, but going back, I'm kind of jumping around now. I'm like,
what we were talking about before of how can we uncouple in a way that leaves the door open for them to come back or leave you a good Google review or talk you up and be a raving fan. Obviously, the aggressive response is not the way to go. So what is the better response to make sure that it is leaving things in a very happy, professional way?
Well, I think it starts off with the mindset that you want to have an opportunity for the door to stay open with this particular person. Because certainly I'm not immune to feeling rejected when someone says to me, I don't want to work with you anymore. It's a rejection.
Only think about you, though. If it's something going on in their own life, that's got nothing to do with you. That's just the way life works.
For sure. But, like we could get on the therapy couch, but I'm trying to avoid that with the podcast this year. But when I read the email, I felt my cheeks flush. So I didn't even, it doesn't matter what I made it about. It was like, I've lost a client. Who knows what it's about? But there was still that kind of feeling of like, oh, not good enough. I've got And again, if you're not watching us, that was a great facial expression that I just did as I was mumbling into the microphone. So I think mindset is the starting point of where is the opportunity that let's not make something about this that it's not. Where is the can I? Where's the constant improvement? So even if it is my performance, how can I learn and grow from this? And to have it as a case of this isn't about me personally, but this is about an opportunity to keep the door open. So who do I need to be, that mindset, that being, so that the door does stay open, so that it feels good for them and it feels good for us, so we can hug each other and say all the best, take care.
And I really think a big part of that is free will. If you truly believe that people have every right to free will, then they can decide whatever they like and it's completely okay with you.
Mm-hmm.
And if so therefore it's not them leaving that's causing the rejection. It's the thoughts that we have about them leaving that's causing the thoughts of rejection. And that's why I said before, when, if we'll find out what the reason is, because if it's got nothing to do with you, if it's just the way their world is at the moment, it's got nothing to do with your performance or the value that you delivered to them or the way that you delivered it to them, then you can detach from that. Then you don't have to bring rejection in, because that's not what rejection looks like. That's someone practicing free will.
And Julie, we did an amazing episode where you provided such insightful information around free will. And for those who want to go back in the archives, that is episode number 10.
Oh, you're very good. You're very good. Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. But I agree that no matter what, it's always a great opportunity to find out. Groovy, see you later, maybe not, who doesn't matter. There's a couple of opportunities there. Number one is to find out in the moment, if you could afford me a bit of generosity of time, I've got a 4-question survey that, if you could fill it out, I would be super appreciative of it. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, we can have a quick chat about it instead. But if you could fill it out, and don't, maybe not overload it with emotion. If you could fill it out, that'd be fantastic. And you word those questions in a way that is easy for them to answer without thinking they're going to hurt someone's feelings. Because most of us, if we do have we'll just call it negative feedback to provide somebody, most of us won't do it because we don't like making another person feel bad. And so you could word it so it's more around your services and the structure you provide rather than me as a human being and how much value that I'm delivering. So word it in a way that's really creating the environment for them to feel more comfortable with being frank, and then you are learning things. The second step of that, though,
before you do the second step, Julie, episode number 20 was how good is feedback not. So if you are looking on how to give feedback to someone.
Nice. And
point number 2.
The second point, because there's a third one that's going to actually come before one. The second point is how to keep them in the loop, and I think that's worth a discussion. How do we keep them part of our tribe, in the loop of communications? We keep reminding them that we're still around, and remember we had we created good success together. We could do that again in the future, and have them know that the relationship, the professional relationship you have with them, is one that they can come in and out as the need arises in their own personal life for that kind of service. But a lot of this has keep bringing me back to, and I think I'm going to start doing this myself, by the time, if they are leaving because they're not achieving success or seeing the value in what you do, I want to know before then. That's too late. And so I wonder where the value is, depending on how long your programs run for. If they're a yearly program, for example, that every 3 months they get an automated. I don't like regular surveys. I just won't fill them out. If they're coming out to me once a month, I'm not going to fill them out. But have the regularity of them be relevant to the program that you're delivering to them. But you have this very, again, well-worded, very short survey that is identifying early on, are you getting the value? If you're not, what area do you think we can improve upon or focus on more moving forward? Because we can easily, with coaching programs, I know it's not the only thing we're talking about, but we can easily, with coaching programs as an example, be creating the ball, and then the ball moves and we just keep moving with the ball, where they're like, oh, there was other stuff as well, and I wish I could bring it ball back and add a few more pebbles to that one, and so it's a more complete ball rolling forward. What a strange analogy. But so I think if you had these regular check-in surveys throughout the relationship, if it then got to the stage where they're saying, I want to take a break, then it's either not about the value you're offering, and so you can release any feelings of rejection or thoughts on rejection about it, or it makes sense because you've had that regularity of communication, open communication about it. And so when they say, I'm still not getting the value, you go, yeah, I know, we've touched on this, we've tried different techniques, and I think a different coach is good for you. Because obviously I'm not getting there with you. And that's not always the fault of the coach either.
No.
It's the way the relationship the two people, the rapport they have with each other.
As you were talking, what came up in my mind was a bit of language that I want to introduce, and it's strategic account management. So when I'm working with a client where they are more often than not service-based, or maybe not, it's product-based, but if it's an ongoing product arrangement. So basically there's an ongoing relationship. And in strategic account management, the idea is, and got a bit of experience here back in the CV, there's a little job of account management that I did do. It is about keeping the customer happy. And the strategic account management is actually sitting down with the customer and going, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve this year? What are the challenges that are going to stop you from achieving that? How can we help? So in a strategic account management approach, it's really about helping to understand where the business sits and then how your business can play a part in their success. So if we were approaching our business operations and looking at that unexpected customer experience, it would become expected because we would want to be doing it regularly, but really understanding where are they at and where are we at in where they're at. And that then elevates your brand because you're proactively looking at how you can be part of their development, be part of their growth, be part of their plans ongoing. So I definitely think that there's something to think about. If you don't have a strategic account management approach in place, if you're running a business where you've got an ongoing relationship with a client, to have a think about, yes, how can you facilitate a conversation that is not about the services that you provide, but an actual strategic meeting, strategically talking about where's your business? How can we help?
Yeah. Another consideration I think that's useful is because if someone leaves because of the way the relationship's been or the level of service being provided, then the client has had certain expectations. We're talking about, unanticipated customer service before, where anticipated customer service is when a consumer or a client is getting their expectations met at that particular business in a very professional and very friendly way. We expect that. That's anticipated. It's only when we go above and beyond and pulling out all stops that we move into the unanticipated customer service level. But if a client has expectations that are outside of what I am capable or willing to do, that's a different scenario as well. That's where you're also going, no, go somewhere else. I'm not going to be doing that. That's not what I do. It's not how I do it. So if that's the way you want to do it, I think you do need to go to a different coach. That's not this world. That's not this service. And so that again, that at the very start when we're taking on clients, being very clear about exactly, because we can't say to the client necessarily, what do you expect of this service? Because they don't know how you run it. They're just plucking ideas out of the air. But that's our job of describing it in great detail with great clarity. This is what it's going to look like moving forward. And so if they've got unrealistic expectations about what they're going to achieve being part of your arrangement, then they are quickly being aligned with what to expect because you are communicating it so effectively. And I think it's worthwhile having that as a continual discussion, that you build that into the discussion moving forward. So they're always reminded, remember, if you don't make $5 million, it's not my fault. That wasn't our deal at the start. But, you're always having those discussions that do continually bring them back in line with what you can offer, so their expectations aren't blowing out to be something that's outside of what you could possibly manage.
Yeah, I think there's probably a podcast in talking about boundaries and setting expectations, again, particularly where you are providing a service to your customers. I think it depends on the environments that we're in, but certainly in a space where you're in an advisory capacity, So I'm imagining that dentists are pretty clear on, yes, I will pull that tooth out if it's decaying and it's going to cost you a certain amount of money. No, I'm not going to give you white veneers without you paying for it and booking in.
No, you bring up an interesting point. This crossed through my mind just this morning. So Charles has got. I was kind of, I can't help but overhear some of his conversations up the hall, but he was speaking to somebody who's very unhappy. He's a legal advisor, so that's one of the many things he does. And he was speaking to somebody who's got a very personal case. They lost their daughter in a very tragic way, and they're taking a case through the courts. And the lawyer isn't delivering the value for the huge amount of money that they've already paid for advice so far. And Charles, I heard him saying, you don't have to stick with the lawyer. They do need to be accountable to you as the client. And then it was kind of turning over in my mind as I was going for my exercise this morning, and I did think to myself, dentists have a informed consent form. Medicos have them as well, as you know, where it doesn't just say, this is why you're choosing to have the treatment done. It's going to solve these particular issues. But this is the long list of negative things that may possibly happen in anything. You have to add everything in there, like ridiculously rare things, but you have to list them all in there. And the patient reads through all of those and says, I understand, because you've explained each of those points and the likelihood of them. I'm going to sign down the bottom. And I thought to myself, imagine that if it was going to be that was a lawyer agreement. This is all the things that could go wrong in this relationship, in this whatever we've got. What is it? I'll edit that up. Yeah, in that, not relationship. With this, not partnership, not collaboration.
Service agreement.
This is everything that could go wrong. And make sure that client is in the headspace of understanding all the risks that they run, rather than just having the expectation that it's just the benefits that we were talking about in our initial conversation. That's what I'm expecting. So
I love a negative frame though, Julie. So I'm
get that one.
Here are the risks that you could potentially have by working with Shannyn. Side effects might include head spins. I think what you were saying there, Julie, is a really important point, especially for service-based business owners, is to set expectations very clearly. Now, like when Google or Microsoft or Apple updates their terms and conditions, you scroll through and you say, I accept it. But there is a point for us when we're providing a service to actually say, I'm making it very clear that here are my expectations. Here is how we're going to do business. Here's how I'm going to provide services. The issue is because if we haven't set good boundaries for ourselves, then our clients don't know where the boundary is. So by setting these expectations and saying, here's what I expect of you, here's what you expect of me, here's what I can do, here's what I won't do, not guaranteeing you $5 million because, and I actually say this to clients, they'll say, I actually had someone say, can you guarantee me results? And I said, nope. I said, because let me give you an analogy. And this is a useful one for anyone who's providing a service. I said, you're going to tell me that you want a cake, a chocolate cake. And I'm going to say, no worries. Here's the recipe for a chocolate cake. Here's the method to make that chocolate cake. I can even go so far as to go, here's the shopping list that you'll need in order to have the ingredients for the chocolate cake. I can even put in your diary the time to do the shopping and then the time to actually make the cake. But unless you turn the oven on and unless you put the ingredients in and follow the method and take the cake out at the time that it's to be cooked, you're not going to have a cake. And I don't come in and make the cake for you. So it's 100% up to you to take my recipe and to do with it what you will to get the cake. And on top of that, because you have agency of free will, episode 10, if you want to add chocolate chips and my recipe doesn't say chocolate chips, you get to add chocolate chips. And if you want to put sprinkles on top of the cake, you get to put sprinkles on top of the cake because it's your cake, because you're the one who's eating the cake and you have to take responsibility for how the cake is going to taste. And so that is where being really clear about what you can deliver and what you can't deliver is really important for the relationship. It sets out very clearly those boundaries around what are we going to give? What are you going to get? What do I expect you're going to do? What am I going to offer to you?
So, Shannyn, if we do have this happy parting of ways, that this client, we want to make sure that door is open for them to come back again. We want to be top of mind next time they need our services. Let's throw out some ideas of how we could actually keep them in the loop of communication, of engagement, I should say.
So one of the things I do often, Julie, is I will check in with that client and I'll give them a phone call. One of the boundaries that I could set better is making sure that it's a very short phone call and not an opportunity for them to talk about their business and personal lives.
We get a free coaching.
And I'm hoping to get some free coaching around that, which is actually a bit of a problem. But in saying that also, I've got a newsletter coming out in the next day or two, and I'm spotlighting 2 clients that I've been working on and off with for 5 years. And that's simply because I've kept in touch with them. I've picked up the phone and said, hey, how you going? Caught up for lunch every now and again, had a cup of coffee every now and again.
And it's not they're being reminded about the wonderful wisdom that you have to offer by having a telephone call.
Have you met me?
You could preempt that with, I'm just in between meetings, so I thought I'd give you a quick call.
Yeah. So I think that depending on what your approach is, and again, what your brand identity is and how you engage with your customers, then there is, especially for a lot of clients, I actually put for their account management strategy outside of, just having those annual meetings. If the client has dropped off or they haven't heard from them for a while or they're not using them at the moment, I'm like, okay, when are you picking up the phone to give them a call? When are you going to catch up with them?
No.
It is actually one of the best ways, old school ways, of just saying, I care. I actually care about it.
It's more delightful than an email or, God forbid, a text, that's for sure. I think another way could be, we always have these people in our minds, and sometimes we read an article that we think, oh, that reminds me of Shannyn, and so utilise those opportunities and forward that email. Oh, I read this. I thought of you because of whatever. And you could even do that as a group thing, and they don't realise that you've said that to 5 different clients. It's just a helpful article that they'd all find useful. But that's a nice way of further engaging continually. And you said newsletters. Newsletters are fantastic because they get that every month or every couple of months, and you're being brought back up to top of mind again.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a client who sends me articles on WhatsApp, which I think, and that's part of their account management strategy. I know that this client actually does that to their clients. Just as hey, saw this article, thought it was relevant.
Yeah. Another fantastic way, which can bring about a bit of reciprocity as well, is whatever their business is, if you genuinely believe that's a good business with somebody else that you've spoken to or heard about, develop that introduction so they can help each other out there. That's a lovely, engaging, very likeable, it brings about a lot of likability and reciprocity about that kind of interaction.
Absolutely. And I actually do think that there's a part to play in social media still. I'm finding it a little bit now in that I think depending on what you're doing, engagement can be a little bit low-ish. I'm still getting traction on socials in terms of converting from social to, website and all the rest of it. But what looks like lower engagement, if I was commenting and liking and continuing to engage in past clients' social media because I genuinely want to support their business no matter where I'm at in their journey, I think that there's a lot of love that can come from that. And it literally does remind them that you exist. But I think anything like that, yes, it's a strategy, and yes, you're doing it because at the end of the day you want to remind them that you exist. But I do think it needs to come from a place of genuine love and desire to have them be successful.
Nice. I like it a lot. Also, this works very well with consulting and coaching space, not so much for legal or accounting, but there could be something with topics that are relevant to those areas. Certainly with accounting, this could be a good topic as well. But at the very least, every year, every calendar year, maybe every financial year as well, you have either a free or low charge workshop for goals. Where are you on track? Are you on track with your goals? What are your goals? Just to bring you back to your path that you've identified already in the past that you wanted to be on, making sure you're on track. This kind of webinar where you are always extending that invitation out to people that used to be a client but that aren't currently a client at the moment. And I think that's a lovely way of bringing them back in again.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure, for sure. Julie, do you think there's a place for singing telegrams, like a gorilla knocking on the door and dancing and giving a card and a balloon?
I think it really depends on the service industry that you're in. If my lawyer did that, I don't know.
Certainly not so great if you're running a dental practice.
Part of your brand is fun, thinking outside the box, doing the interesting thing. It's perfect.
I would love a decayed tooth to knock on my door. a decayed tooth-ogram. So, Julie, are there any other ways that you could keep the relationship alive in an authentic way?
Of course, always maybe you've got your core products normally, one or two core products that you've got or programs that you offer, but have a series of side, low cost, low time, energy cost things that are going on. So that's a very good reason why this is not just a newsletter where I'm talking about the existing services again and again and again, but I'm talking about new things that are popping up every couple of months that as I say, they don't take a lot of time, energy, money for that person to interact with. But you are always looking to be offering something new all the time. And if I want a little bite of Shannyn, because I do really like working with her, but I'm not yet free enough to commit to a full program, then this is nice to get my Shannyn fill.
There's bites of Shannyn available. Okay, well, Julie, is it time to wrap it up? Do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. If your customer says thanks but no thanks, this is not an opportunity for you to project your emotional issues on them. There is an opportunity to keep the door open. Think about the bottom of your funnel and how you can uncouple in a conscious way that makes them feel really good about your business so that they will continue to be a raving fan of your business. Think about opportunities for learning and growth for yourself, because there is always an opportunity to adjust your product offering. Before they uncouple with you, ensure you're doing things along the way to manage the relationship, set great expectations, upsell if there's opportunities there from an account management perspective. And finally, keep the door open by reminding them that you're there through social media, e-newsletters, picking up the phone, and gorillograms.
Terrific idea. I love it. Thanks, Shannyn. It's been a lovely, insightful session as always.
As always. And I think our next session should be on boundaries.
Sounds pretty good.
I'm going to put that down. So make sure that you do join us for episode number 46, which we'll talk about boundaries and expectations. If we remember, if not, it'll be about something else.
I'm thinking it's like the 3 little peaks of boundaries. Are your boundaries made of straw, wood, or bricks? Looking forward to speaking to you next time.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, listeners. Speak to you later. Bye.
Bye.